Bitcoin radicalizes peace.
Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. It's the opening line of the Cypherpunk manifesto. Privacy is the right to selectively disclose information.
I mean, I was born a bit too late to be on the Cypherpunk mailing list, but I was born just in time to be on the Bitcoin developer mailing list.
Being a cypherpunk is all about using cryptography and technology to defend your individual sovereignty, freedom, enforce it.
The cypherpunks believed in strong encryption and anonymity, digital electronic cash.
I would argue that cypherpunk is the only way to scale.
Okay, we ready to rock and roll?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So we have a fantastic topic for you today, and an even better group of panelists that I'm very thrilled to be up here with. So we're going to talk today about, does Cypherpunk scale? And I'm going to let my great group of panelists introduce themselves. I'm Ryan Gentry, formerly of Lightning Labs, currently the CEO of Bitcoin Infrastructure Acquisition Corp.
My name is Beddict. I'm the VP of Research at Foundry.
I am Rockstar Dev, a core contributor to BTC Pay server. And then some of you might know me from my work on Strike. Now, I mostly spend my days advising Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin VC funds, doing these talks, evangelizing Cypherpunk, interacting with people. So looking forward to talking more about Cypherpunk.
Hi, I'm D++. I'm a Bitcoin professor. I call myself an experiential educator because I believe Bitcoin has to be experienced to be believed. I'm also a lightning evangelist. And really, at the end of the day, I'm just here for Mario Kart. For those of you who haven't played my Mario Kart game, I'm set out here. And if you haven't experienced the magic of the Lightning Network, I invite you to come learn about it with me.
Strongly endorse and co-sign, especially because I think I'm the best Mario Kart player here.
You are so good. Just underdog, humble vibes.
Yes. So to set the table, for those of you that are not familiar, Jay, let's start with you. What does Cypherpunk mean to you, and how do you see its principles applied to Bitcoin?
Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. It's the opening line of the Cypherpunk manifesto. And that's, I think, a very distilled definition of what it means. You know, Rockstar and I at least look the part, but I think the way that Bitcoin came about, right, is confluence of so many different things, and we talk a lot about, you know, sovereign money and all sorts of great stuff there. But at its core, Cypherpunk is about control. Privacy is the right to selectively disclose information, and I think that Bitcoin provides probably the best control that an individual can have over their monetary future, and then some of the stuff that people are building, you can go broader than that, but for me, yeah, it's a necessary component of modern life, and it is something that we need to work very hard. It can't be taken for granted.
Yeah, I would build upon that because for me, being a cypherpunk is all about using cryptography and technology to defend your individual sovereignty, freedom, enforce it. And then as a cypherpunk, you should try to be an activist, like a really human rights activist, and help others protect their private data, help them enforce their individual freedom. Like the code that I write for decades now, like I love when I see that others use that code, use those tools to defend and expand their individual freedom. Because Bitcoin is great, Bitcoin is gonna fix so many things, but it's also gonna usher in a new world. I guess technology advances, we will all just naturally be under more pressure and more of our data will be collected. Like, I don't know, probably most of you saw that presentation that Mark Zuckerberg did on glasses, the new glasses that they are now launching. And, he turned to the audience and there we go. Like, now everyone in the audience is doxxed, their likeness is collected. And it wasn't, malicious intent or whatever, but that's what's happening more and more. You just wake up, go outside, walk down the street, you end up in someone's Instagram live video. Your likeness is collected. So for me, cypherpunks have been thinking about this, for decades, and they have been building a technology that allows us to protect our private data and build a better world where that's, taken into consideration as you're building products, as you're doing things. And looking forward to also Dee talking more about her cypherpunk technology.
Yeah, well, I was born a bit too late to be on the Cypherpunk mailing list, but I was born just in time to be on the Bitcoin developer mailing list. So those of you who were around and paying attention to this in the 90s, how many of you remember in the 90s the fight to protect our right as civilians to strong encryption with Phil Zimmerman and PGP? And at the time, encryption, as you recall, was classified as a munition. So if you wanted to use encryption across borders, you were exporting arms. They fought to get that reclassified as speech, so we're now protected under the First Amendment. And that laid the groundwork for Bitcoin. The cypherpunks believed in strong encryption and anonymity, digital electronic cash. With Bitcoin now, we have the ability to build this new world that Rockstar has described. So I don't think any of you would be here if you didn't have something about you that had the ability to imagine that new world. I think that we're in a group of visionaries. And what's amazing about Bitcoin is I'm able to imagine the new world that it builds without having to suspend my disbelief. That's why I'm here. I'm here for number go up, we all are, but I'm also here for the revolution. And how extraordinary is it that we can have both without harming anyone?
I love it. Give it up for that. Absolutely.
Why not both?
Do good by doing good. Dee, I want to stick with you and come back around this way. The theme of the conference is Imagine If. We were talking yesterday about how you have a very clear vision. Imagine the Bitcoinized cypherpunk free world. What does that look like to you?
I truly believe that if you fix the money, you can fix the world. I think if we have a baseline of sound money backed by encryption with privacy and the ability to transact across borders, what are the implications for humanity? Well, there's many second and third order effects that we can imagine. But let's just pick any one of them. Housing, for example. What happens to the housing market in a world in which we have a pristine asset that we can save in? What are the second and third order effects of that? Well, your house no longer has to become your bank account. You no longer need a portfolio of homes. And the market gets repriced down to its utility value. If humans can have an affordable place to live, what does that look like for our world? That one small little detail changes things. We have more time now to spend with our families. We have more time now to fix our hearts, because Bitcoin fixes a lot of things, but ultimately we're going to be the ones that then have to go and fix ourselves. Bitcoin allows people who previously were priced out of housing to now have a safe place to live. And that transforms the world. I fundamentally disagree with the NIMBYism that affordable housing doesn't clean up the streets. Of course it does. But I can also understand and empathize with them if we were to steelman their argument that they want to protect their own investment. Because why wouldn't they? Because they haven't had an alternative. They haven't had a place to park their wealth. I don't fault the folks who have investment portfolios of homes. But with Bitcoin, you don't have to. You can actually save your money in a disinflationary asset that protects your purchasing power across time and across space. You can get rid of all of these vacation homes. You can get rid of the fine wine and watches and all these ridiculous things that we've had to park our wealth in. Now, of course, unless you want to. You can have these things if you want to. You're just not forced to anymore. That's the world I'm excited about.
Yeah, and I would say that that world looks way more like this. Is those of us that are in Bitcoin and that have been following the cypherpunk philosophy and teachings and wisdom, really, we now do live in better world, I would call it, especially if you adopted secure communications signal. Now, you're not participating in discourse on Facebook and being targeted by algorithm to increase your engagement. Like, you're spending your time interacting with people more directly, more meaningfully. If you adopted Bitcoin at any point in the last 50, you have achieved financial freedom, which is a foundation of all the freedoms. And the big thing with Bitcoin is that Bitcoin radicalizes peace. If you're in fiat system, just by the way things are set up, you're forced to become an investor. You're forced to become a speculator. You're forced to deploy your assets into the market and participate, like pick stocks. Then you pick this one. Well, you won, but you haven't won as much as if you pick this stock. It's terrible. It just takes you away from that piece. Sure, if you want to be active and engage, maybe you find thrill in that. But I think for vast majority of people, you're searching for peace. You're searching for that point where, you're good, people around you are good, and that's really what, to me, Bitcoin does. Like, it radicalizes that peaceful stance. And this is why, again, I'm such a believer in cypherpunk philosophy, because electronic peer-to-peer, like eCash, has been a holy grail for cypherpunks for decades. And it was like, we will never reach it. We reached it with Bitcoin. It's all about cypherpunk future is now. Let's just evenly distribute it so everyone can participate and, get that piece and use that piece as a stepping stone to really improving themselves in the end.
Yeah, I mean, two things there. I think opt out, right? That's what Bitcoin enables. That's what Cypherpunk enables. Pretty much everyone here at this point that was born into a society where you didn't have a chance to opt out. You were forced into a society where, your home became an asset that you had to bet your livelihood on. Bitcoin provides an opt out, but I think broader on the Cypherpunk ethos, you talked about encrypted comms, right? For the majority of human history, communication was face-to-face, maybe some shouting, some drums on the battle line. If you could read or write, you could pass messages. And encryption has been with us ever since writing and passing messages back and forth, of course. But not until did you start to see written communication at a scale that could disrupt the way humans think about the world. And I think one of the things that drew me to the cypherpunk movement before even I got into Bitcoin was this idea of, solid, like, secure communication. And I think that, you talked about financial freedom being one of the basis of all other freedoms. I think the freedom to communicate is also really, really important. And I think being able to have encryption as a tool that is not a munition, right? It is speech. It gets you back, and I say you broadly, it gets you back to a place where you thought you were, right? I think maybe folks are wise enough now that everything you say online is going to be hoovered up and used for something, right? But there's this misconception that, like, oh, I don't matter, it doesn't matter, right? You all matter, to be abundantly clear. All of your thoughts matter and your voices and opinions, and that's why they're sucked up. That's why, these companies make millions of dollars off the back of that data. But you never had the chance to opt out. Cypherpunk says you will opt out, and you can opt in if you want, right? It's freedom of choice, but the tools exist for you to take your life back and to have control over those things.
Excellently said. And I think with that kind of foundation of what does cypherpunk mean, how is cypherpunk applied to Bitcoin, and kind of what does the ideal kind of cypherpunk world look like, we can now turn to the question at hand of, does that scale? And I think, my kind of the assertion that I would like to make, that I'm very curious for y'all's thoughts on, is that I think one thing that is uncontroversial, it is vitally important for the success of the movement that the cypherpunk principles are applied appropriately and protected at the Bitcoin protocol layer, most importantly. And we should always endeavor that anybody who wants to run Bitcoin in a self-sovereign manner is able to do so and is able to get all the benefits of privacy, self-sovereignty, freedom to spend, save, and earn their money however they'd like. However, at the application layer, some of the most popular applications of using Bitcoin are not very cypherpunk. Custodial Lightning wallets, Bitcoin treasury companies, etc. My assertion is that it is not as important at the application layer that cypherpunk ideals are followed, inviolably, because most people aren't cypherpunks. But it is vitally important that those ideals are protected at the protocol layer, because without them, there's no hope of having cypherpunk ideals at the application layer. So, Rockstar, you're ready. I can say.
I'm ready. Yeah,
let's
give
hear
us
your
time,
thoughts.
Ryan. Just give us time. That's how I see it, because I would argue that cypherpunk is the only way to scale. You look at how we individually scaled with our fashion choices beyond what's socially acceptable, right? You look at what Bitcoin as a protocol has done to scale financial system beyond the point where fiat system was good, in my view, up to a certain point. It allowed us to develop, it allowed new technologies to come in, but we just have passed the point where fiat system can sustain the demands of modern society. We now have a situation where I would argue, we all here agree, when politician goes during the elections on stage and promises to solve the problems with printing more money, we all know that they will not do that. But we don't have we don't have a better system to hold them accountable, and we simply are opted into this madness of money printing. And this is where cypherpunk scales, because cypherpunks will rebuild the protocols, and people that are not cypherpunks as well. Like, everything will become a protocol. Once we are at the level of development of civilization, like that we have, say, we're building technology that harnesses the power of sun, and what's the Dyson sphere, right? Will we really still have like a committee that votes on how that energy is used and where it's directed? No, there will be a protocol. There will be cryptographic signatures that control that, because people will not trust the word of another human or group of humans. At a certain point, we understand that that kind of a trust, that kind of power will be abused. They will use the power for their own good. So the protocols and cypherpunk is the only way to scale, Ryan.
Okay. Jay?
I think, I'll use a real world example. So I work at Foundry. We're the largest Bitcoin mining pool, largest single Bitcoin mining pool, I should say. And as such, we kind of ride that gap between application and protocol. What we enable with our miners is very protocol driven, but the way that we build our application is entirely controlled by us. And a while back, we saw one of our competitors attempt to sort of overtly censor certain transactions in a block. And, that is not very cypherpunk of them. But that is an application choice that they made. They weren't changing Bitcoin. The controversy is that because they touch the protocol layer as a mining pool, right? How does that reflect? How does that enable certain things? They didn't change Bitcoin Core. They ultimately walked that stance back, to be clear, because a lot of folks in the community came out against that. But that battle between application and protocol is always raging. And I think when we look at how we at Foundry approach this, like, we don't want to mess with the protocol. We keep it vanilla. We build an application that services publicly traded companies, and it does that well. It meets the standards that they have. Publicly traded companies, I don't know many cypherpunk ones, and that's okay, right? Cypherpunk is a concept, like, obviously it's a big part of our personalities, but it should never be someone's entire, there's no true Scotsman, no true cypherpunk. But yeah, having that thought process as you're building, who's your audience? Does this harm the protocol? Can this erode the protocol? Mm-hmm. And then if it can, go talk to the protocol developers and say, hey, I found a gap. Can we kind of close this before someone tries to capitalize on that?
D++, take us home. Close us out.
Well, I'm inspired, Rockstar, by you always, what you're describing of
Likewise.
a system of rules without rulers. So I think with regard to Bitcoin, currently Bitcoin is not under attack. The protocol itself is not under attack. But it's important that we're waiting in the wings to protect it should we need to. So I know if there's ever an adversarial environment in which Bitcoin itself is being attacked, I know these guys are going to fight to the death. This guy in the front row, he's going to fight. He's going to be on our side. Who else in the audience is going to fight on behalf of Bitcoin? A lot of you. Now, not everybody raised their hand, and that's okay. We need some subset of the users to be able to fight to protect it. We don't necessarily need every single user. So an analogy that I would make is probably all of you in this room drive cars. Few of you know exactly how they work under the hood. We all use the internet. Few understand TCP/IP, and that's okay. There's no purity test here. We need simply a large enough threshold to be able to defend the network. And we saw that in 2017. So we have now a rich history of questions that have been answered. Well, what if there were to be an attack? What if there was a state level attack? What if there was a company level attack? Would Bitcoin be resilient? We didn't know. I'd say in 2011, 12, 13, there are a lot of unanswered questions. We got a big answer in 2017 with the block size wars. Bitcoin has only continued to become hardened. And over time, with every passing day, it becomes... But as long as these folks are on my side, I think we're going to make it. I know we're going to make it.
I love it. Give these folks a big round of applause.